Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and today we are continuing our transfer portal series, and we are on to the Missouri Tigers. Eli Drinkwitz's Tigers, they've been kind of pushing, threatening for the SEC or threatening for a playoff spot for a while, but they haven't quite been able to get over that hump, losing a few extra games that maybe they shouldn't, and he's looking to address that with this portal class, and I think he did a pretty good job. But starting off with who is leaving Como and who will no longer be a part of this Missouri team. Two receivers started off. First off is Josh Manning. He was a 6'2", 213 guy, had 29 catches for over 300 yards and 2 scores last year. And his running mate has gone too in Marquise Johnson, who was a 5'11", 185, more of a slot gadget guy, but he also had 38 catches. He had 240 yards and 2 scores. So some decent production is leaving the receiver room for Missouri, but we'll get into how he backfilled that later on in this show. The second biggest departure, in my opinion, was their quarterback in Bo Pribula. He went to Virginia. He didn't necessarily have the best year, throwing the ball especially. He was good with his legs. He did get hurt against Vanderbilt. That caused him to miss some time. But he had a solid year. It was nothing special, like I said. But, you're starting quarterback, you're starting quarterback. And when you lose that in the portal, there's a lot of pressure to backfill that, which we'll get to also. But then the biggest loss in the portal for Missouri, without question, is Damon Wilson II, the elite defensive end who went to Miami. He is 6'4", 250, an absolute physical menace coming off of the edge of the defensive line. He had 9 sacks last season. He and Zion Young were an incredible pairing. So now, obviously, with Cristobal wanting a defensive edge, that's how you know he's legit. I hope you're replacing Ruben and Akeem Mesidor, those guys. But Damon Wilson, incredible player, and he is out, no longer with Missouri. So that's a big loss. But now let's just go to the good. Let's go to the good for Missouri and Eli and who they brought in. Starting off with one of those receivers, it's Caden Lee from Ole Miss. So he's 5'11", 175. He's pretty much that same size as Marquise Johnson, so he'll come in to replace his role. He had 44 catches for over 600 yards and 3 scores with Ole Miss last year. Now, part of the reason why this is such a good ad is because his quarterback's coming too. They brought in Austin Simmons from Ole Miss, who was the starter for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss before he got banged up and then Trinidad Chandler did what he did. So he was injured, replaced last year, but there's tons of raw talent, and he was good enough for Lane Kiffin to start for that team that he knew had playoff hopes last season. So we know that Austin Simmons is a really good player. He's got to stay healthy. Hopefully he keeps developing, and we'll see how he does that with Eli in Missouri. But another quarterback they brought in is Nick Evers from UConn, who will be a depth piece. But the reason why I wanted to bring him up is because he was committed to Florida. He spent time at Oklahoma, so this is a quarterback who the SEC for a while thought, this can be a guy in this league. And now Missouri has him as a depth piece behind Austin Simmons. So he's back up to the SEC. And with the fact that he was getting looks from multiple SEC programs earlier on in his career, it kind of gives you confidence that if he's needed, he can step in and maybe give you some good reps. Or, he's young. Can he just be the guy behind Austin Simmons? So we'll see how that plays out. But another receiver, before we get to a big dumb defender that I like, Nashawn Montgomery coming in from Florida out wide. He was a blue chip freshman, didn't really get a whole lot of action last year in Gainesville, but he's 6'1", 190. He's blazing fast. So he does have that combination of a little bit bigger size than a normal slot guy, but he is very, very quick. I'm really excited to see how he pans out. When he hit the portal from Florida, my first thought was he's going to go to a really big time program. He ends up at Missouri, not to select Missouri, but I thought he might end up at a bigger place. But being at Missouri for this next year, I think he can really, really thrive with Austin Simmons in an offense that figures they're going to really open it up a little bit with the talent they're bringing in on offense. I'm very excited about Nashawn Montgomery. And another receiver they're bringing in is Caleb Goody from Cincinnati. He's 6'1", 178, very similar size to Nashawn Montgomery. But he had 29 catches last year for almost 500 yards and 2 scores. So the playmakers that Missouri is bringing in with those 3 receivers of Caden Lee, Nashawn Montgomery, and Caleb Goody, that's a really good haul. And you add that to the running backs of Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts. The offense has tons of weapons around Austin Simmons. Can they stay healthy? Can the scheme work? But Missouri's offense on paper looks very, very strong. And the best defender that they brought in from the portal that I like a lot is Robert Woodyard Jr. from Auburn at linebacker. Now, they lost Trotter to the pros. Their elite linebacker from last year. So bringing in Woodyard is incredibly important. He had 47 tackles and 2 sacks last year. Just a commander of the defense. Very violent. He's a really nice ad, like I said, trying back for that linebacker room, some of their losses. So Missouri, I think, did a really good job in the portal. They're one of these teams in the SEC where they don't necessarily have the biggest brand, the most resources. They're just kind of always there. within the conference race and even within the college football playoff race. So I'm looking at these ads mainly on offense. Like this could be something that really, really comes together incredibly well. And defensively, some other guys who I didn't highlight who they brought on, Malik Bryant and Bobby Washington Jr., both linebackers from Miami. They added Chris Graves in the secondary from Ole Miss. Like there's a lot of really high quality ads from the portal for Missouri. So when we get to the roster breakdown later on in the summer, Missouri's a team that I might be pretty high on. I like a lot of these individual pieces, but the biggest question is coming out of the portal, can they turn into an elite team? 2023 FSU, it turned into a great team. Next year, same strategy, flopped. 2 wins. So I'm not. I don't think it's either really extreme here for Missouri this year, but I am interested to see how this all plays out as we keep getting intel from spring practice and over the summer. I'm very excited to see how this Missouri portal class really comes together because of how talented all those individual guys are. But we are about halfway through this transfer portal series, going through every single team. If you've been enjoying this stuff so far and you want to see your team coming up next, subscribe to me here. Follow me on Twitter. I will have it all for you guys all summer long. I've been Will Thomas, and I will see you next time.